Hello everyone, Kenty Tiger here with Bengali Engineering and Play. We are back in Space Engineers. One of the things that I wanted to do, which is actually what kind of prompted me starting to do these videos, is tutorials. So I know there's a lot of really good tutorials out of there from a lot of your famous YouTubers and space engineers out there. And I hate to say I'm just going to be redundant, but I'm going to be redundant. So I'm trying to fill some niches here where I haven't seen a whole lot of videos. I'm sure they're out there. But so what we're doing today, you can see in front of us on the screen here, is a mock-up of something kind of colorful there. So if you read the title, we are going to design and build, which is really to say build, a sorting system. Now, there's a bazillion kind of storage systems. It really depends on what you're doing, what your intentions are, everything. So in this case, this is kind of an all-inclusive one. Let me bring the design onto the screen here that we're going to use today. So this is a little bit hard to see, I know, but this is obviously a very, very busy diagram here. So if we start out over here, pull-in system. Now, I use some conventions within my own building that keeps me consistent across all my builds, especially when I'm building like a station or a large shipyard or something like that. So my conventions are a pull-in system, which is to say a sorting system or part of the sorting system that literally a vessel can dock up to, connect on, and it will literally just pull in everything. And that way the pilot of the vessel doesn't have to worry about, oh, where does this go, where does this go? It just pulls it all in. Now, of course, there's upsides and downsides to that. The upside is it's very convenient. It doesn't worry about anything like, okay, well, this is, or this needs to go over here. But the downside is if somebody has stuff in their storage spaces on the vessel, it pulls that in too. Um, so there are little problems there. So pulling in has its upsides and downsides. If we look over here on the far side, supply system, and I color my supply system green. Green for go, however you want to look at that. So the supply system is everything. So this is all the finished products, anything that you could possibly need, want, or use. So you can see over here, and we'll get into some detail on what these storage areas are. Ingots and ice, components, miscellaneous and tools, and ammo. So the concept here is that this supply system is integrated in your station or your ship, and it gives kind of an indication of what you can find there. So if a ship was to hook up to this, they would be able to resupply and pull out anything that they needed as far as finished product goes. So that's the green. The blue, which we're going to point to right here, it's in the kind of the center lower portion of the screen. I call it the fuel ice system. Somewhat of a redundant system. Do you really need it? No. But the reason I put it in, and again, kind of a convention, is because a lot of devices that you work with within Space Engineers are 3 blocks wide. So how do you integrate a 2-block wide system in a 3-block wide component? Like a reactor, a large reactor is 3 by 3 by 3, right? A large storage container, 3 by 3 by 3. If you play with some of the mods, such as the nanite control factories, those are a 3 by 3 grid. So why did I choose 3? Because there wasn't necessarily any reason behind it. It was just to keep things consistent. Being an engineer and having that slightly OCD component to being an engineer, I wanted to do something. So originally the concept is, well, it's a third independent conveyor system that I could use for whatever. And that whatever became fuel and ice. Why did I separate out fuel and ice? Well, fuel and ice is kind of one of those strange things that you gotta have it, but it really kind of has nothing to do with anything else. Nothing to do, everything to do. So I figured those two items, which is to say uranium ingots and ice, we'll pull those off, put them off to the side, and let them do their own thing. Now, does that mean that we're not going to have that within the regular system in the supply system? So do I have to, let's play the scenario here, so I drop off everything in my little medium-sized mining craft. So I hook up to the red, it yanks out all the ore, and off it goes. But hey, I need to resupply all my stuff. I'm running low on ice. I'm running low on uranium. So does that mean I need to hook up to the blue rather than, well, I need some components because I got to fix my ship. I bounced it off the side of an asteroid. Oops. So I need some components. So the answer to that is no. And we're going to show you how to integrate some of these systems. So nope, you just hook up to the supply system, the green one, and pull in everything you need, and off you go. So we're going to try and make it simple, and we're going to use sorters to do that. So let's start going over all this. I'm an engineer. This is the design phase all done. I know a lot of you engineers out there have practices, the way you do things, the methodologies that you use. I tend to conceptualize something in my head. I put it onto paper, and 9 times out of 10, from the paper phase to the actual phase, there's going to be some changes. It doesn't quite work out in real life how it did on paper. In this case, real life is going to be space engineers. So we're going to try and mock this up. Now, this is the very sorting system that I use on my more complicated builds. So I know this works. I've played with it. There are some interesting quirks that you have to understand, but it works. That's the important part. So the pull-in system. How does the pull-in system work? Well, this thing goes everywhere. The red independent conveyor system. It's not interconnected to anything else. Ultimately, all of those red lines come back to this guy right here, sorter S1, Sierra 1, and all it does is pull everything in. Now, the settings for this are blacklist, and I've got them all on this diagram. I do not yet know how to put documents up on Steam, and I don't even know if you can. So what I'm intending on doing is when we're done with this evolution here, I'm actually going to put this mock-up up on the workshop, and then people can take it, play with it, do whatever they want with it. It's going to be completely vanilla, and I'll go over the toolbar once we get to that phase. So completely vanilla, so you can load it in anything you want, look at it, play with it, really dink with it, and break it, fix it, figure out how it works, rather than just listening to me babble about it. So eventually we'll get this document up there because this is your roadmap. Now, again, some engineers do things differently than I do. I can indeed conceptualize something in my head, sit down and try and build it in Space Engineers, and have a great time doing it. I know a lot of you folks out there do the same exact thing. When we get into the little more complicated things, things that I wanted to work out in my head, how does this work? How am I going to cover all the bases? Contingency planning, making everything work. I sometimes like to draw things out. And by drawing things out, one of the bigger reasons to do that is because I can't really plug somebody else into my head. That would probably be a scary proposition at best for most people. They'd probably go stark raving mad within seconds. So, writing it all down, that intermediate phase of taking it out of my head, putting it into some communicable medium, and then handing it to somebody else so they can study and look at it, saves all that pain and heartache of hooking into my brain and going stark raving mad. So, this is the diagram. Alright, so pull-in system. It can go integrated throughout. You can have multiple connectors that are the red connectors. Doesn't matter. In our demonstration here, when we get to the mock-up, there's going to be two of them. So we go to this single sorter that pulls everything in. Now this diagram has all the settings. So the settings are blacklist, none. The reason why we do that is we want it to pull in everything. So the only way to do that is blacklist, none. Drain all is on. So you want it to pull in everything, not leave anything there. It's not just sorting, it's pulling everything. Okay, you have to dump that somewhere. So storage unsorted is where it goes. And this can be one container, it can be 50 containers. It really depends on what you're doing with it. Refining obviously is going to come into play here. So how fast are you, for example, mining? How much volume are you mining? Are you talking about a small ship miner that's taking in 20, 30,000 tons at a time? Or are you talking about a large-scale asteroid eater, large ship that has, 800 drills on the front of it? And that's really going to determine how you make this work. In our case, we're going to have one large container. I'm going to use mostly all large containers, and the reason for that is this is demonstration. Obviously, it's scalable and flexible when you get into your own build. Temporary storage. This is directly connected, so it's right next to each other. Hopefully you can see my cursor on the screen there. Let me make sure you can. So temporary storage. What is this? Well, this is theoretically a different container, but doesn't necessarily have to be, because it's really interconnected with this unsorted one. So the idea here is that we're pulling stuff out of refining. So as the refineries are done, there's ingots, and the sorter over here is going to pull those ingots in. So what we needed to do was have some way that we could pull out of this refining area and into our main storage area. So if we look at this conceptually, all of my refining is up here at the top in the center. All of my pull-in and temporary storage is right here off to the left center. Everything down here is about power and gas generation. So this is my hydrogen, oxygen, and my fuel ice storage, mostly for local stuff, and I'll explain that a little different as we go. Everything over here on the right side is our main integrated storage. And one of the things you see is assembly over here. The reason why assembly is over here instead of in this processing area is because assemblers, I'm preaching to the choir, I know, need ingots to make components, right? So they have to be able to draw directly from this ingot storage. They're going to ultimately dump out into components. Now, while we as humans name all these different storage vessels to be convenient for us, the assembler doesn't care. So when it gets full, is going to start pushing out to the closest relative storage unit, even if it's marked ingots, and it starts dumping components in there. That's fine, it's going to do that. So this thing is really directly connected, and the assembly that you use, which is to say the build that you use for your assemblers, whether it's just an assembler, whether it's 15 daisy-chained assemblers with full upgrade modules on it, whatever, it's connected in there as you see it conceptually. So it is on the draw side for everything, just like the supply system interconnector is. What does the A and the B mean? And we'll jump into that in a minute. So temporary storage. Let's go into refining here, get into a little more detail. So the concept here, this first sorter, so everything comes in and dumps into this unsorted storage. we want to pull in, obviously, for refining. Refining is about taking raw materials, which is to say the ore, and refining it. Perfect sense, right? So that's what this sorter does. Now this sorter is going to pull in three things: ore, stone, and gravel. Okay, so it's a white list in your sorter, and I goofed that this right here is supposed to be on. Sorry, I messed up there. So on. I will fix that before I post this document online. So the S2 sorter, CR2 here, is designed to pull in everything that we need to refine. Okay, now why are we pulling gravel in? There's a lot of mods on the workshop that take stone and they call it mineral extraction. So I went ahead and designed that in there because I use a mineral extractor myself. So I like to not just dump out all of that tonnage of stone. Okay, if I mine it, I want to be able to use it for something. The extractors, again, there's probably 10 of them in the workshop on how to take stone and extract the trace minerals and turn it back into something. So a lot of times what you'll see is you take the stone, it refines it into gravel, then these extractors take that gravel, we'll use some imagination and say it in some way pulverizes it down to the molecular level, extracts all of the trace elements out of it, and then gets rid of the stone. Now, however it does that. So those trace elements then are now ore again, which dump right back into the refinery and do what they do. So we pull in the gravel because we need gravel here. This second sorter, the Sierra 3 S3 sorter, also a white list, also drain on, only deals with gravel. So we pull all of the gravel into gravel storage. Why do we pull it into gravel storage? Well, this might actually be an array of extractors. If you have a boatload of stone, ultimately, then you're going to need a boatload of extractors to deal with it all. So gravel storage. These guys can draw as they can, do what they do, and then the refineries will literally pull that material back in. Now, one of the other things you can do is have a sorter that goes to a temporary storage, so it literally pulls it in as fast as the sorter can handle it, and then you have local storage here for the refinery. So that's another option. It's not on this drawing, but obviously you can do that. So we pull in the raw materials and gravel. Yes, I know gravel is not raw, it's technically an ingot. Sorter, we bring it in. The refineries work with the stone and the ore. The sorter pulls out just the gravel, puts it into gravel storage. The extractors then take that gravel, extract trace elements, which turns back into ore of the trace elements, and then the refineries can use it. So that's what this path here is, refineries. So everything else, everything that's left is going to be ore. Sorry, ingots. Refineries make ingots. So as the refineries fill up, they push everything to the closest storage, which happens to be this one, and then we march across this line to sorter S4, also whitelist, also drain all, and it's pulling in ingots and ice. Why ingots and ice? Well, we need some way to get that ice through the system. Okay, obviously the refineries don't do anything with it. We can mine ice and use it directly. It's one of those strange ores that is both an ore and an ingot. But if you sort on ingots, you're not going to get your ice through it. So, and we'll learn on this. So this thing pulls in ingot and ice and stores it. Now, what is this connector A? Well, I'm talking about ingots and ice. Uranium as an ingot is, hey, an ingot. Okay, and ice. So our main storage for both ingots and ice is here. This is somewhat of a local storage concept, but interconnects into this fuel ice distribution system. It's a completely independent distribution system, completely independent system that we can work with, conveyor system. So this one, so sorter 8 over here, S8, sorter 8, Sierra 8, interconnects onto my storage and ingots and ice. So you'll notice here the white list is ice and uranium ingots, but drain all is off, which means I can push this through at my leisure. It's not just sucking everything up. So it leaves some over here so you can have it in your supply system. Again, an independent distribution system, conveyor system that's independent of everything else. So fuel ice pulls in as much as you want to push across. That's the way this system is designed. And then it is available for distribution within this other system. Okay, so off of our local fuel ice, we are doing power generation because obviously all of our reactors need uranium. Also, our gas generation and storage system, we can be as complex or non-complex as we want to be, but obviously we need ice into those. So all of our gas generation systems need some ice. Now, the reality is if we get into a large station, a large ship, you're going to have air vents. Now, how do air vents work? Well, obviously they need to attach on to your oxygen storage system somehow. Now, does that mean we have to run this fuel ice system all the way through? No. You have your distribution system, usually the supply system, that's going throughout your ship or your station, right? So whether or not you completely plumb the independent system and put the air vents onto that, or you just use the supply system that's already there, really doesn't matter. It's all kind of in the conceptualization how you do it. In this case, what I've drawn is an interconnector that lets those gases move through, which is to say the oxygen move through, interconnects it into the system, but will not let that fuel ice loop. Okay, so one of the interesting things about sorters is if they have a way to loop, they will. Which is to say, if the sorter can dump something into something, and there is a connection from the out of the sorter back to the in, it will pull that material through indefinitely. Okay, so the idea is to keep things from looping. So you'll notice this sorter S9 down here, Sierra 9 sorter number 9. The settings is whitelist, none, which means nothing can go through. Okay, and drain all is off. Now, at one time when I was experimenting, the gases, which is to say the vent systems, the air vents, and everything, didn't matter that you had a sorter in there. Now, a couple of revisions back, probably 5 or 10 now, I was playing and discovered none of my air vents were working. And in the process of troubleshooting, figured out that, well, all of these air vents are, there's a sorter. And it looked like sorter was blocking oxygen. So, I lost something. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Temporarily lost my video feed there. So, anyway, the concept here is this gives that gas a path through, a logical path through, and everything should work. The key word here being should. Okay, let's look at our final stage sorting. So sorter S4, we already talked about this, ingots and ice. Drain all of these are drain all on. Whitelist, ingot and ice. So that just dumps all of your ingots and the ice into here. Now we can borrow the uranium ingots and ice through here into our local storage. Components. Well, you could pull in components. So this deals with those. It pulls all of those components out of the temporary and unsorted storage and dumps them into, hey, component storage. Sorter S6, Sierra 6, Sorter 6, sorry. Again, a whitelist. We're pulling hand tools and bottles. Now, one of the things I've noticed is the bottles don't actually move. So you cannot pull a bottle through. A bottle will always stay where it was. Now, that's not to say it won't go through. It just will not pull it automatically. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's a bug or that's intentional. It may actually be intentional because obviously if you hook up your ship, you don't want all those bottles to pull out. You put them in strategic places for a reason. So it actually kind of makes sense. So, but the whitelist is set, so you have your hydrogen bottle and your oxygen bottle in the list, in the whitelist. So if you want to move them through, they will go. Again, drain all is on. Sorter S7, Sierra 7, Sorter 7. Whitelist, ammo, and drain all is on. And it dumps it into ammo. Now, for those of you who've played a little bit, you know that ammo can be a bit hungry when it comes to storage. So you may end up with several ammo storage. Okay, all of these are interconnected on this side. Is that problematic? Not really. But ultimately what the concept here is that we want all of these to be hooked into our supply system. And once again, the assembly also hooks into this integrated supply system on this side, so it can draw the ingots that it needs and also dump the components back out to where people can use them via the supply system. Alright, so that's basically this diagram. So again, the confusing parts here are these interconnectors A, which goes over here. It's the drain all off sorter, so you can push things through as they go, as you need them. And in fact, your reactors will pull uranium through. Your gas generators will pull ice through, so it helps. So you have a positive connection path. Even if this is empty, these won't just die. Okay, they can pull from your main storage over here. So the concept behind this is independent distribution system, specifically for fuel and ice, which originates here. So this system really just originates here. It's completely isolated. All right, sorter down here is just this interconnector for gases back, but it will not let anything else through. Okay, and this logically connects onto here, which is really to say it connects into this distribution system, your supply distribution system. All right, so that's the diagram. Again, looks a little bit busy, but that's the basis for everything. So we're gonna put that back to the small size. I'm gonna get that off the screen. Then we'll start using. All right, so here's our mock-up. So we talked about the pull-in system. That's the red. So you can see there we have two connectors that are red. One at the bottom left corner of the screen and the other one at the top right. Not quite the corner, but close enough. We have a green, that's our supply system. And then we have the fuel ice system, which is the blue system. Each one of those has connectors at both ends, so this is a distribution system. But as you can see, they are independent from one another. All right, so let's get building. So the first thing I want to do is do the pull-in system. So let me bring my HUD back up. To do that, I'm going to use a big container, and like I said, we're doing red. So I'm going to stick this on this little thingy here where we can be as close or as far away from that. I conventionally like to be like one block away. Okay, sorry, meant to hit 0 and hit P. It's too damn close. All right. In this case, we have a sorter, and we can put this sorter really anywhere that we want to. So in the, oops, sorry, that was supposed to be a 5. In this case, I want everything to be visible. So I'm going to make it a little more obvious. We're going to put a sorter right here. And, okay, so if it's not obvious and you haven't worked with sorters before, these arrows mean something. So materials can only go through a sorter one way. Okay, and the arrows indicate which way things are going. So in this case, the pull-in system, which is this entire red distribution system, is pulling in. So the sorter, you can see my reticle here, the sorter is going to pull in from this side and push out on this side. So in this case, we are, I'm going to put an elbow up here and then an elbow across so I can keep everything here, bing, bing, and then another elbow here to connect it. Alright, so here's what we have done. You can see all that turned green. So we now have two independent connectors that pull everything in via this sorter. And this sorter is going to dump everything that it pulls in into that big red container. So that is, if you remember, my unsorted storage. So let's go to this and configure. Worthy of note, I have a, just right now, completely independent nuclear reactor over here. So obviously a large reactor. The reason for that is, obviously, while I'm demonstrating here, I wanted this to be functional. Okay, we're operating in creative, so there's no uranium in that. It's just putting out power because creative. Anyway, everything powered right by that, and we will eventually hook that into that fuel ice system when we build it. That will be kind of the last one we build, just because. Alright, K to get into my configuration. So this is called Conveyor Sorter, which it certainly is. I like to just call them sorters. And this is my pull-in sorter. So this is my main sorter. Now if you remember, we're going to blacklist none. And the reason we blacklist none is because we want it to pull everything. If we had a whitelist, remember whitelist is what we want. Blacklist is what we don't want. So we don't want none. So if you think the double negative there, don't want none, turns into everything, right? Don't want none becomes all. Okay? So we are in filter mode blacklist and nothing here. Okay? And remember that we wanted this down here to be drain all. Sorry, it's up here. Drain all is on. Okay? Drain all on. So pulling in everything. And we take that and it's going to dump right into here. Alright, now if you remember, we had another cargo container sitting here. Now, I conventionally do colors, so I can pay attention to what things really are. So, for convention, I'm going to color this a dark gray. And this is, if I lined it up correctly, yeah. So this is that temporary storage that lets things come out of my refinery. Okay, so we're going to do refineries. So number 7. Didn't want to do that. Wanted to spin the other way. There we go. All right. So I'm going to put 2 of these down here, and I want you to use your imagination. So this first one here is a refinery. Okay? This second one here, we're just going to pretend that this is an extraction system. So obviously in vanilla there is not an extractor, but we're going to pretend there is. Okay? So the first thing we have to do is pull in everything. So this is our S2 sorter, if you remember. So let's figure out how to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do here, we'll pull back up. We're going to put an elbow on here. We're going to put a sorter on here. So this is my S2 sorter. It's coming this way, so towards me. And then it's going to dump into, so I got to put an elbow here, and an elbow right there. Okay. Now, this mock-up obviously is not going to look real pretty, but it's functional, which is exactly what we want to do. Alright, so we configure this. Now, remember I said we need drain on. Okay, drain all on. This one is my refining sorter. Okay, so let's go ahead and name these while we're at it. So large cargo container. This is our unsorted. Okay, this is just everything coming in. There it is. This is our temp storage, our intermediate. So I'm going to call this temporary. See if I can spell temporary. How's that? All right. So refinery is a refinery. The other refinery we're going to pretend is an extractor. Okay? So, let's review, make sure I did this correctly. So, and I didn't. So, we need to change this to the whitelist, remember. So, what do we want here? Obviously, we want ore, right? Oops. Back up to the top. Ore. Okay? Add. What else do we want in here? Well, we wanted gravel, right? And we wanted stone. Now, normally stone will come in as part of ore, but this is the OCD thing again. I want to see it. I want to make sure it actually comes in. Alright, so those are our three. Whitelist, drain all, on. Okay? So, everything should be coming in, and that should be working normally. So that's all set up. So now we have a method of getting all of our junk from the ships in the red, so the pull in, into here, through here, and into, actually those of you who were really following what I was doing, I goofed. Yeah, I goofed. I'm sorry. So let me change this, because if you remember, this sorter actually comes off of this container. So sorry, I messed up on you. So let me fix that. Again, I apologize. That was no, I can't fly anymore. Okay, and a sorter here, which is going to go towards the other, towards the refinery. Suddenly it's not. Does that. Alright, and connected in. Okay, so that should all turn green. Alright, again, let's, we'll catch up to where we were. Okay, so this is back to our refining sorter. Drain all is on. It's a white list. And we'll do this in the same gravel, add, and stone. There's stone and add. Okay, so whitelist, ore, gravel, and stone. That way it'll pull it all in. Now the diagram says ore, stone, and gravel. So ore and stone, I put those together because they're all unprocessed. So anyway, we'll verify here just one more time. Drain all on, whitelist. So this looks to be correct. I've named it correctly. So, okay. So this is now working how it's supposed to. So pulling right out of this main one here and then dumping into our refineries. Now again, if you wanted to have, in fact, let's go ahead and do that just for fun. 4. So here is a small container. So this small container is going to act like a buffer. So even though it's small, it's just the concept here. So the sorter now is not dependent upon the refinery for storage. Okay, it literally is going to pull all the ore it finds, dumps it into that small container, and then the refineries, you may have 10 refineries, can all pull out of this container. So in this case, ore temp storage, right? Okay. So this is, again, the concept of this is not on the diagram, but if you need it, if you think you're going to be moving that much ore around, it's probably a good idea. That way your sorter doesn't become a container. All right. Now, if you remember, there was a sorter and a container. So we're going to do kind of a mock-up here. We'll put the sorter onto here. All right. And there was a container. I'm going to use a small container to do this. And then into our extraction system. All right. So here's the sorter. This was our S3 sorter, our sorter number 3. And all it was doing, if you remember, so we were doing drain all. And this was our gravel sorter, okay? Just gravel. So, just a singular thing. We're going to be in whitelist mode. We're going to cruise all the way down here and find gravel. Probably under G somewhere. There we go. Gravel, add. Okay? So whitelist, gravel. This is the only thing this is going to let through. Okay? So as it gets the gravel, it's going to move it through. And remember, gravel is crushed stone. So it's processed stone. So when the refineries are done with stone, the output is gravel. It's going to pull up all this gravel. It's also going to pull in, remember, because sorter number 2 also has gravel in its whitelist, which means this sorter is actually going to pull the gravel all the way through, because the refinery can't do anything with gravel because it's already refined. So this guy pulls that all the way through, even though it has gone through the other sorter already. Okay. So what are we doing with that? So the gravel sorter pulls our gravel in. We want to have it go into this container, which is just gravel storage. All right. So if we have a whole bunch of stone that needs to be processed, then our extraction system here will be taking that as fast as it can get it. Okay. So the reason to have containers is you don't want the sorters and the containment system this way to be waiting on your sorters, right? So if they can pull it through and store it, then the only waiting is the processing, right? So here we have the system. Now, if you remember, we had a loop back that went from our extractor, which happens to be this one on the right, back to the refineries, which was on the left. Okay. So in our case, we're actually going to loop this in by way of let me do a number 5 and connect it in. Okay, so this conveyor here represents that loop around. Okay, now we're pulling stuff out, right? Okay, so in this case, we do have another port on the bottom, and I think I'm going to go ahead and utilize that. So let me fly underneath here and remember where approximately this is. So does this make any sense to go underneath? No. The reason I'm going underneath is more just for sake of demonstration. Right. So we've got to find, there's the port. All right. So let me put that block back in here. All right, so why did we do this? Because I'm just trying to keep all the ports independent from one another. So what's coming in, what's going out, this one goes to somewhere else. All right, so let me get back to, I think it was number 8, yes. All right, so we're gonna do an elbow here. We're going to skip so we should be able to go up right there. So we're going to put an elbow there. Okay. Now, normally, if you were going through armor like this, you would have, like a conveyor or something. We're not going to do that because I want this to be all kinds of visible. So, all right. Now this connects into my temporary storage, remember? So this pulls out, or rather as the refinery gets full, kind of pulls out. Now you could put a sorter in here if you really wanted to. The trick is all of those ingots are coming through, but if you filter on ingots, then your ice can't come through. Now theoretically, we shouldn't have any ice in here because that initial sorter 2, did not allow ice through. Okay, so we could technically just sort on ingots and pull the ingots out and put them into this particular chest. Now the reason why I didn't put that on the diagram is because we already have an ingot sorter. Okay, so this would be like ingot sorter 1 and ingot sorter 2. Did I really want to do that? Alright, the other thing you remember is that these two storage units are a logical unit. Okay, they might be the same, or they might be 20 different containers. It just depends on how much material you intend on running through this. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and put this in. It's on the diagram. So obviously I could butt this particular container right up against here and it would be doing the same thing. But what I want to do is keep this somewhat like you see it on the drawing. Alright, so what are we doing from here? If you remember the drawing, we had 4 storage containers, right? Okay, so I'm going to make those 4 storage containers. I'm going to color them all the same. They're part of my supply system. So I'm going to put them all over here. Now, I may run out of room to 3. So to get around here, we're going to put I didn't measure anything out, so the whole concept here was to build this on the fly as we went, take the design and build. Number 8, I believe it was, and 5, change colors back to our supply system. Alright, so we have all 4 of these containers are now interconnected, but I'm going to draw them a little. Whoops. Yeah. Nah, let me do an elbow there. And here's why. So I want this to be as close to the diagram as I can, and those ones that I just stuck in the middle are not actually there as far as the diagram goes. Okay. Now I'm going to put that one there. No, let's do an elbow. So I know I just put all those in there, and now I'm taking them back out, and you're wondering, what the hell is this guy smoking? Alright, so what I wanted to do was keep this fairly similar to the diagram. Okay, so speaking of diagram, just because we're going to come off over the top here so we keep it out of our way. And this is our connection from the storage to our distribution system. Okay. Get my elbow in here. Alright, so what did that do? We just connected our storage, those 4 green containers, into our supply distribution system. Remember the green, right? So we now have those interconnected in. Alright, now there was 3 other things that had to connect in here. And remember, we had our supply system from the gas generation that comes over into this system, and we'll connect that one on much later. So we just built our refining and extracting area. Now we need to build our sorting that goes into these guys. All right. So I'm going to do these for the sake of visibility. So 4, and then my sorters. Okay, and remember, they're going into the containers, right? And it's kind of hard to see here, but you see that there's a control panel closest to the view, so closest to me here, and that's important. I'm going to put those up on top just so they're convenient to get to. Oh darn. Turn the T off. T is not my friend. Okay, so we are configuring our sorters, right? So this is sorter number 7, okay, which was ammo. All right, so ammo is whitelist because we want just ammo. So we roll this back up here, ammo, add, and drain all. Pull it all in and dump it into this container. Okay? So that one is done. But we want to go ahead and name this. So this is large container ammo. Okay? While we're up here, we can rename this one. So this is miscellaneous, and hand tools. This one here is components. Following our diagram now. Components. Okay. And this last one was, oh, I turned it backwards. Alright, sorry. This is the time when you can laugh. Oh, darn it. Yep. So go ahead and laugh. That was an OCD moment. They all have to go the right way. And container, ingots, and ice. Alright, and we'll put the sorter back on here that I destroyed accidentally. Alright. So, remember, ingots and ice. So let's configure this. This is ingots and ice sorter. We are draining all, so drain all is on, and it's a whitelist because we want to pick specific items. Ingots, add. Roll down here to the eyes, and we're going to see ice. Okay? Whitelist, ingots, ice. Okay, so that one's configured. We can verify, make sure we turn the drain all on, which we did. Next one. This one is sorter number 5, which is for our components. So, components. Did I spell it right? That would be no. Components. Drain all. Oh, go back here and get rid of the conveyor. Obviously it's a conveyor. Okay, whitelist. Scroll down and we select components. Add. Whitelist, components, drain all on, right? Drain all on. There we are. So that one's set up. And this one's kind of unique because hand tools will come through and bottles are supposed to come through. But, like we were saying before, bottles don't automatically get pulled in. Even though you have drain all on, it leaves the bottles where they are. So, we want the ability to move them through here, but we don't want it to pull through. It won't pull through. Or it didn't pull through. We'll see how that goes. Alright, so we see hand tools, and we're going to add. Then we go down here to hydrogen bottle, add. Even though bottles are hand tools, I discovered that you couldn't pull those items through without specifically doing it. Now that may have been a bug and they fixed it, don't know. Because in the assembler, where do you find bottles? Under hand tools, right? Character tools. Alright, so whitelist, those 3 items, hand tools and bottles, and drain all. Okay, so that one's configured. Now, what does this actually look like over here? Well, that looks identical to the other side. So, we're going to put an elbow here, because, you know what, just so it looks a little neater. Do an elbow like this. everything. All right. And if you remember, our entire supply or our entire storage system pulled off of this one. Now, does it have to pull off that one? No. It can pull off the 5th one. However you want. Ultimately, you just want to make sure these guys are connected in. All right. So, here's on the simplistic view. This is our entire supply storage mechanism. So this is our main storage over here. Now, if you remember, the only thing that's missing from the diagram is our assemblers. So what I'm going to do is put that in next. Now, assemblers. What is the unique thing about assemblers? Well, assemblers have a port on both ends, and we can put all kinds of so let me change this. I'm going to change this to a conveyor. Okay, and I'm actually going to do 2 wide, and you'll understand why I did that. Oops, sorry, 5. Let's get here, and then we have a connection here. Or about here. Well, you know, we do this on the outside of the component one, but let's go ahead just for fun and pull it off of. So components and ingots, right? So, in this case, I have to get my viewpoint up here enough to the point where we can do this. In, and we're going to change this a little bit, and we're going to put this over here. This one we'll change that as we go here. So there, we're going to take this one off and actually change that to this, and then connect it that way. All right. Now, why do we put so many gaps here? So let me grab the assemblers. I'm going to set the assembler up on end. So let's just pretend that we're doing assemblers here. So we have 2 assemblers end to end. You can have as many as you want end to end. The thing to remember is that cooperative function, okay, if you use cooperative functions, you have to have the assemblers directly connected. If they are not directly connected, they are not cooperating. Okay, so it's kind of one of those strange things, but you have to remember that they have to be connected. I connect them end to end. Why is that? Because if we, let's go ahead and do it. So a yield module, a speed module, a yield module is what's going to be used on the on the refinery. Okay, so it will actually improve how the refineries do what they do. All right, so why did I put these the way I did? I connect them end to end because to put upgrade modules, like I'm doing here, requires the sides to be available. So end to end, so they can work cooperatively, and then put the upgrade modules on the sides. Okay, so there's my assembly system that is interconnected, and just because I'm OCD, I have to connect redundant systems. So we'll connect them on the bottom and the top. There we go. So now we have 4 assemblers, which is 2 cooperative pairs. Alright? So that's how you would build that. Okay, and following our diagram, the only differential here is that I had 1 connection point in, which is a little different than what I have here. So this one is actually 2 connection points in, and we could have simulated the same thing by going into this conveyor if we really wanted to. So that was our assembly system. Now the only thing left is our gas generation system and our power. Okay. So how do we make this work? So I forgot, and gotta find a oxygen generator here. Oxygen generator. Okay, we're done with those. We're done with that. We're done with that. Might not be done with storage yet. All right. So 7. And we're going to change colors again over to blue, because that is our that's our color scheme. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that sideways just because I think I'm going to need it. So we're going to put, just because, we're going to put 2 of them side by side there. This was originally tiger orange. We're going to change it to blue now that we're actually doing something. And I forgot my my hydrogen tank. Big monster. All right, so darn, this thing's in the way. Okay, we're gonna put it over here. Alright. So, and I think we'll just go ahead and do a second tank because, just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to do conveyors. Here's why we're doing conveyors. No, I'm going to keep 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because oxygen tanks, and I forgot oxygen tanks too, imagine that. Oxygen tank, there it is. I need the hydrogen tank already. Alright, I'm going to stack 10 of these. Alright, and the last thing we need, which is going to go right over here, is my fuel ice container. Alright, it's going to go right there. Alright, so if we remember that the fuel ice container is actually pulling out of my main ice container. So we're going to buy just a tiny little, because I need a pull-off point. Or, hey, let's have some fun, huh? Let us put an elbow in, and we're just going to go straight up with it. Do an elbow again, and we will ride parallel above this other. Parallel above this one. Alright, now, if you guys were following along, you noticed I missed something. What was it that I missed? Sorter, right? Alright, so this was sorter number 8, which was a whitelist uranium ingot and ice pull-in, but with drain turned off. So, that one's going to go, I'm going to go ahead and put it right here so it's really obvious that it's here. So remember, of course, why would it rotate the direction I'm expecting? There we go. Okay, so we're pulling in from over there, through the pipe, and then dump into here, right? Alright, so let's configure. First thing we're going to do is name our sorter, okay, which is our fuel ice, right? Our drain off, because we want to do this at our leisure. We don't want it just to pull everything in, because this is local storage. I mean, it will be used for other things, because obviously it's interconnected into that blue distribution system, my fuel ice distribution system. So it is a white list, and we have only 2 things in our white list: ice and uranium ingot. Okay, that's the only things we have. Alright, so whitelist, ice, uranium ingot, drain is off. Okay, and that's because we don't want it to pull everything in. We want to move stuff over as we have it, as we need it, and then leave it alone. Alright. We are connected, and this container we will also this is fuel ice. Alright, so if you remember, we are powering our reactor and our oxygen generators from this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is put, now obviously I could go right in the bottom here, out the other side, and into the reactor. Okay, yes, I can do that, but we are going to, for sake of the demonstration here, do things just a tiny bit differently for the sake of example. So let me come down here. Go this way. Alright, now I want to, yeah, we'll go ahead and connect on here, which means we'll put a conveyor here, which will let us connect and then back out, and we will do All right, so our oxygen generators are connected to our fuel ice. Our reactor is connected to the fuel ice. Now we just need to connect our oxygen generator onto the storage systems. And to do that, we're going to go into the distribution trunk, which is here at the bottom. Having trouble for some reason. All right. And this is going to be a little bit interesting. A little bit unnecessary, but again, this is just for sake of an example. That one too high, isn't it? All right. Okay, so here's what we have. We have our oxygen generators can pull in ice, start generating. Our reactor is connected in, so it can pull in uranium as it needs it. And we have to do two more things. Remember those, the A and the B, okay? So the A is done. That's this side. The B now is how do we get all our distribution back into the blue? So in other words, how do we get air into this system? And we're going to do that now. So just because we're going to put two of these, put an elbow, bring this up in the air, another elbow, oh darn, and we called for sorter, if you remember. It was an output sorter, so we're going out from the system. And remember that we whitelist none. Okay? We want to block everything. Okay? So this is sorter number 12 according to this, but it's actually sorter number 9. So this is our fuel ice blocker. It's not just blocking fuel ice, it's blocking everything. So we could actually call this just blocker. But I like to be a little more specific because if I am in a station or a ship and I'm looking for this one, of course, that's what the show on HUD is all about, right? But I want to be a little more specific. So this is actually part of the fuel ice system, and it's just blocker. Now remember, this is also drain all off because we don't want it to move anything. All we want it to do is be able to connect air back into the system. So what's this other? We have nothing here, which whitelist allow it through, nothing. Okay, so allow nothing through. Okay, so we should be all set. And then the last thing we do is interconnect into our supply system. So this is going to look a little strange, we're going to connect into the middle of our splice system. Normally I would kind of go over somewhere where it actually looks like we're doing something over here. In this case, we're going to go in over here. So I'm going to put an elbow on. Uh-oh, I missed. Oh, I missed badly. Alright, so what does this sorter do? The sorter prevents anything coming from the supply side into the system, but it does allow, because it's pointed outbound, it does allow all the gases to come out. Okay, so if everything stayed the same and gases couldn't travel through the sorters, I don't know if that's still the same. It may allow it through in either direction. I don't know. So that's going to be another tutorial we're going to investigate that very. So the only other thing that we need to do is actually connect this system into the distribution system. And we're going to do that really local. So we're going to put a conveyor right there. Make it really, really easy. We're going to elbow. Put it in. Alright, so if you see what we did here, we just connected our fuel ice container, which was the storage, into our independent distribution system. Alright, so this is our entire system. Busy, just like it was on the ground. Because we're an hour now, what I'm going to do is stop the video and call it quits for this one. So this was the tutorial of how to build, and our next video based on this is going to be testing this to see if it actually works as expected. So I'm going to build a mock-up of a few things. So I want a container that has everything in it, and we will put the everything container onto the pull-in system and see what happens. Okay? So I'm going to mock that up while we're off screen. That way you don't have to sit there and watch all the boring stuff happen, and then we will test the snot out of this whole system and see if it actually works. Alright? So, this is Kenty Tiger signing off, and we will see you next time.